All right, cool. We are live. Good to see you today, my EOS Podcast friends. We have a fun episode today. We have Daniel from Chestnut, a recent second place winner of the EOS Global Hackathon. So we're going to get to hear about his project. He's a co-founder. And we will also get to hear all about EOS. So Daniel, welcome to the show, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brendan. So my name is Daniel Liebeskind. I have been involved in the blockchain space since 2013 when I bought Bitcoin at $60. I simultaneously bought order of magnitude more gold, which has halved in value, which has been a funny thing to have happen. But yeah, I've been building mobile and web apps for the last 5 or 6 years, and about a year and a half ago transitioned into doing blockchain development. Specifically, was doing Ethereum and Solidity work for a while. And about, I guess, in June, went to the London EOS Hackathon. And that was really the first time I was exposed to EOS code and actually building projects on EOS. I'd heard obviously of the cryptocurrency prior to that, but got super fired up because we were able to actually build something that functioned and that had a decent user experience. And have really been just laser focused on EOS and building on EOS ever since. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, some wonderful little nuggets in there. One was the one I would like to dig into a little bit is the ETH to EOS transition. What were you trying to build on ETH previously, or is that you learned Solidity? Did you try to build something there, and what were like the main differences from a dev's point of view there?
Yeah, so I was building something called Kismet Chain, which was a way for groups to raise funds and have the community of people that give them funds actually collaborate on how they are used. So basically have the person that raised the funds petition for a particular use and have the crowd say yay or nay to that particular use case. And then the smart contract just automatically sends to the address that they had put in, as part of that request. So it was interesting. We got a lot of interest from different fundraising groups around this. It also could potentially have opened up fundraising to individuals, particularly not in the U.S. that otherwise have trouble getting access to capital to do different projects. So kind of like a GoFundMe on the blockchain. It was an interesting idea. The challenge with doing it on Ethereum was just that when you tried to do something and interact with the blockchain, it took 20 seconds for the transaction to actually process. And, I didn't quite realize going into it that was going to be the case, but the user experience of waiting 20 seconds for something to happen just was not modern. It felt like, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, and this is something that's said pretty often, but, it felt like sort of the early 90s or mid 90s in the internet. Like we were doing dial-up stuff. And, when you compare that to more traditional platforms like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter, it just felt like it wasn't going to be competitive. And so, it was, and I was building that really right up until the EOS Hackathon that I went to. And so then getting exposure to the EOS technology, which, by the way, is really easy to actually build on. And the Block One team and the community in general have done a great job of building tools and templates to get people started really quickly. But, experiencing that and the thing that we built there, which was a data marketplace, everything was just super fast and super fluid. And actually, it was mind blowing. It was like, oh my God, we're actually, in the modern age of blockchain with this thing. So to sort of compare and contrast them was a stark difference.
Cool. You know what? I just met some devs the other day who were coming from ETH to EOS, or were building on ETH and were interested in EOS. Where's the best place to point someone to? Is there like a crypto zombies or whatever the ETH development tool was? Is there somewhere easy to point people right now for
to actually learn? Yeah. I think one of the best things you can do, so you can go through sort of like tutorials and that sort of stuff, but Block One has actually put out a GitHub repo that is basically a fully functioning dApp. And you can, if you just read through that GitHub repo and deploy it, basically they've set it up so you can clone this thing and be up and started with fully functioning DApp, and smart contracts, just like that. I think my recommendation would be to do that, right? And then start tweaking things and modifying things. It is built with React on the front end. So, people should have familiarity with React if they're going to go that route. But that's kind of what I did. And I will say that, in the Hong Kong Hackathon, which is the first one that I went to back in June, this repo was very primitive. It still worked, but it didn't have a lot of functionality, and it wasn't, it wasn't really production ready. At the London Hackathon, and so, by the way, at the Hong Kong Hackathon, very few teams actually built fully functioning dApps with integrated smart contracts, because it just wasn't quite there. At the London Hackathon, it was a minimum requirement to have a fully functioning dApp with smart contracts integrated. And part of the reason they were able to do that is because this repo, gave that to you day one, or I guess hour one of the hackathon. So yeah, it's a really great place to get started.
Okay, killer. That's a good tool. I wrote that down. If you see me looking off to the side, it's because I'm writing something to take a note, not because I'm not
Great.
paying attention. So, anyway, I put that down so that so I can get that info to these devs. So that'll be cool. The other thing you mentioned in the beginning that caught me was how you purchased your first Bitcoin and gold kind of at the same time. I was having like this, a few years back, like this existential crisis. Like I was an economics major in school, and I was like, okay, I just have to at least get something for this, to hedge myself against this monetary system, and so I bought gold, silver, and Bitcoin all at the same time, the same way you did, and then watched Bitcoin slowly like surpass the price of gold, and it's what a funny time to. But it's that same mindset though,
Absolutely. Well, so and I had bought when I bought at $60 something when it had gone up from $10 to 60 in like a week, and so my thought was, this is sort of an experimental thing. Gold is proven, right? This has been a thing that throughout history people have relied on as a store of value. I really liked the idea of blockchain and of Bitcoin, but it had just 6x'd in a week, and at the time, I didn't know anybody else that was even talking about Bitcoin. So I was like, okay, I'll put some in here just as a toehold. And then when it goes back down, I'll just sort of buy as it goes back down to where it was. And it essentially just never did, it just kept going up and up. So, it's just one of those things.
Well, that was wise of you. There's that investing strategy, kind of the barbell approach, where you take the two ends, really conservative on one end of the spectrum, and then really high risk, high reward on the other end of the spectrum, as opposed to playing around in the middle. So I wish I was wise enough to realize that back in the day, but I was just kind of going for it back then. So cool. So let's talk a little bit about the hackathon. Which hackathon was your team at? It was the London hackathon and then the finale. And did you win the London hackathon, or how'd that work?
Yeah, sure. So two of us from what ultimately became the Chestnut team actually went to the Hong Kong hackathon,
okay.
Which was probably 4 months before, something like that. And we didn't win there, but we built something pretty slick. It just wasn't really to the theme of that event, which was to build something that had scalability of users. We built a data marketplace that was basically an enterprise project, and so we realized that really wasn't what the hackathon was supposed to be about at that particular one. In London, the two of us came to London. We knew a bunch of other people that were thinking about going to the London hackathon or already had committed to going. We knew them from Bali from our travels, which we could talk about later. But, we came together, we found out the theme was around privacy and security and making users have more security as they're interacting with blockchains. we had been sort of kicking around the idea of doing some sort of automated if this, then that kind of system. And, it actually was, as we discussed it and as we thought about it, it was a perfect fit for the theme. If we sort of modify, we hadn't really thought about it as a security technology. We had thought about it more as just an automated way. For example, if you get crypto sent into one account, automatically having that distribute to a bunch of other accounts, which is something that I do right now with traditional banking. And so giving some of that kind of power of traditional banking to blockchain, we realized that you could actually do this for security. And it was a funny thing. We thought of this idea, we got really excited about it, and then we started talking to some of the mentors about whether it was technically possible. And we were getting feedback that it wasn't really. And that was a little disheartening. We were, thinking maybe we should pivot. The mentors were all sort of talking to each other about it because it was an interesting technical challenge, technical idea. And we slowly started getting feedback about, an hour into thinking about how, should we pivot into some other idea? We were getting feedback from several people that they actually thought that this was possible. And here's kind of, we heard a couple different ways you could do this. And ultimately we realized, and, sort of the mentors realized that this was possible, and nobody had really thought about doing it this way, or, it certainly was a talking worthy project. So, we went ahead and built that. We wound up winning best UX, best UI, and second place. So we didn't come in first, we came in second. But that also got us a spot, a ride to the grand finale, which at the time we had no idea where that was going to be. And Block One was, holding the cards close to their chest on it. It turned out that it was in South Africa, in Cape Town. So we actually just went there. We just participated in that a couple weeks ago, and it was more of an incubation week. So not really a hackathon. It was trying to bring your hackathon project to more of a business model and figure out, how do we distribute this? What's our revenue model? Whether we want to and how to raise funds. That sort of thing. I think the way Block One is thinking about it is a little bit of like a condensed Y Combinator kind of thing, or startup week or something like that. And it was a fantastic experience.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So how far along did you guys end up getting as far as you go through the incubator week? Did you find a way that you can possibly monetize, scale, and does it look like it's something you're going to pursue, or where are you at as far as that goes?
Yeah. So we've actually been working on this in the meantime, which was something that we were encouraged to do, or certainly allowed to do. And we actually brought on one of the best smart contract devs in the industry, Jack DeSalvatore. And so we've been building this going into the incubation week. It was very focused on business, right? And so one of the learnings out of that was one of our epiphanies during the incubation week was that there were actually a bunch of different models that we could be pursuing. We had originally sort of thought of this as one product, but we realized that there was in general, there's a spectrum of what consumers in blockchain are going to want. And so not everybody's going to want, for example, if you have a fully decentralized solution, that's a little bit more expensive and maybe not as much hand-holding, not everybody's going to want that. Some people are okay with centralization if it gives them account recovery, for example. And so there are different models for how you could bring this to market. And I think that, the sort of multi-pronged approach and giving people choice is something that we're going to be pursuing. And our plan is to continue with the project. And we're actually in the process right now of forming a legal entity. We're putting together a roadmap and going, we're building our team. So if anybody's interested in working with us on this, let us know. And we're going full steam ahead.
Killer. Well, congratulations on that. And I probably should have done this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but can you give like a user story? Tell a story about how you see someone actually using this, someone who doesn't have any technical expertise, but what are they going to do to use Chestnut? How's it going to help them?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, I can use myself as an example. I'm part of a collective of devs, designers, and blockchain experts called Block Collab. And we actually pay each other. We collaborate. We pay each other through cryptocurrency. And there's always a fear whenever you send cryptocurrency to somebody that instead of sending 100 EOS or 1,000 EOS, you send 100,000 EOS, right? You add an extra zero to. If you do that right now, there's really no recourse. You can theoretically get the BPs to reverse it, but that's going to be a really challenging process. And it's sort of reactive rather than proactively preventing the transaction in the first place. So, given this fear that many of us on our team have had, what Chestnut does is allows you to set security parameters for yourself, security and sort of thresholds on your account. So I might say, for example, I never want to send more than 100 EOS at a time. And if I do, I want to have some other approval mechanism that's required in order for that to go through. And so, if I then try to send 10,000 EOS, it'll deny the transaction. And you can do this for transaction amount. You can do it to prevent yourself or somebody else from sending too many transactions. You can have a blacklist. You can have a whitelist of accounts or dApps for interacting with. And so that's sort of the kernel of the idea.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's like and then you have some sort of, the UX has some sort of easily customizable way to pick basically options of what you want to do with your account or what you want to enable your account to do.
That's right. Yeah. So, our whole sort of ethos is around user experience, and our theory is that our thesis, and I think a lot of people in the industry say this, is that blockchain is going to have a lot of trouble scaling to the masses, to normal, everyday users, if it doesn't have ease of use, if it's not easy, if it's not simple, if it's not intuitive, and if they don't feel safe interacting with dApps and with their own account. So yeah, we're very focused on user experience. We're also very focused on, part of this is bringing the experience that people are used to with sort of traditional banking, traditional checking accounts. Your ATM, for example, most banks, they limit you to taking out $200 at a time, right? And there's a reason for that. It's that if somebody gets a hold of your credit card, of your card, or you accidentally take out too much, there's really no recourse. I guess in traditional banking there actually is. In cryptocurrency, in blockchain, there isn't. So bringing those themes and the things that people are familiar with to blockchain is one of the themes here.
Very cool. Very cool. I just thought of an analogy for what you guys are doing. You got your team's basically like the lid on a salt shaker. Right now you got a bunch of people running around with an open lid, and they're trying to pour the right amount of salt into their soup. And some of them are going to just dump the whole thing in, and it's a tragedy. So you guys invented the lid for the salt shaker.
That's right.
Keep it safe over there.
I like that. Yeah, I might use that.
All right, go for it, man. That's I was talking to the Dex EOS guy, and they came up with the antes on EOS, because everyone's talking about this adoption. They're like, oh, we want to get our grant, we want my mom to be able to get onto EOS. So antes on EOS is the push for
antes on EOS. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're all about that as well. We're trying to make account creation really easy as well. So, our goal is to have it when my grandma says, oh, okay, imagine a time when there are lots of dApps, right, which is coming soon, I think, on EOS. There are lots of dApps to interact with, and grandma wants to come on and interact with a dApp. She doesn't have an account. She says, what should I do? Our hope is that she comes to Chestnut, creates an account, has security there, right, so she can trust herself with her account. And just making it easy for auntie, for grandma to come on and start interacting with things.
What type of what type of integrations are you guys looking at as far as wallets? Do you have any wallet integrations at this point, or what's that scene look like?
Yeah, we're pretty wallet agnostic. We don't actually ever get access to your private keys, for example. So you would use a wallet the normal way that you use a wallet. You could use Scatter. You could use any of these the wallets that exist, or any of the ones that are coming. We want to be wallet agnostic so that people have a lot of flexibility there. Right now it's also is a little bit challenging to use a wallet, to even figure out how to import your keys, for example. So trying to, through a user experience, through an interface, guide people through that is also part of what we're going to be doing here. But, in terms of integrations, I think one of our plans is to have an open API and have people be able to integrate with us. Our sort of first version of our product is what we've been talking about here. We also have other versions, other potential ways of going about this that could be really interesting for the community. So.
Yeah. So what's that? What does that look like? So right now you're at basically a phase where can people use the tool yet, or is it? Have you launched it a beta?
We're not really live. We're on the jungle net, so you can see what we're doing, what our smart contracts look like. But we're not actually at the point where we're creating mainnet accounts. We're going to get there pretty soon. Our plan, I think, is in the next 2 months to have account creation and some basic security parameters. But we're trying to do this in a very iterative, but also very intentional way. You really only get one shot at this. Mm-hmm. And not only is it important for us to get this right for ourselves, but I think it's important for us to get this right for the community, for the ecosystem. If people are coming to EOS, which is our goal, is to bring people from outside EOS. Great. If you already have an EOS account, you also can wrap a Chestnut smart contract around your account. But the big opportunity is bringing people that are not even in EOS or not even in blockchain at all to blockchain. And if the smart contracts aren't properly done and there are security issues, then we're going to miss this opportunity and maybe even set the whole industry back. So, we want to be very intentional, very smart about this, bring on the right resources, do a smart contract audit, those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whenever, especially since you are like the layer that's securing people's accounts. If you go in and say, we're going to take care of you and then don't, that's going to be an issue. So yeah, you got to be methodical at this point for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's kind of your shorter term roadmap. What's your midterm or maybe long-term roadmap? What type of iterations do you see possibly coming out of this?
Yeah, so the first version of our product is where you wrap a smart contract around an account, and that gives people full autonomy over their account, over their smart contract. We also could have a version where you share, and you would have complete access to your private keys. We never see them. We can't really touch your account anyway. Sort of the next level would be giving us access to, or giving us a shared permission, giving us an owner key, giving your Chestnut smart contract really a shared owner key. That would enable you to have things like account recovery and managing of resources on your behalf. And this might be something that somebody like grandma actually would prefer, right? She wants account recovery, or auntie, I guess, we're using that example. She wants to have account recovery and make sure that, if she loses her private keys, she's going to not be out of luck there. So that would be, those are sort of our two first incarnations. The next level, or the next product, the next option would be some sort of custodian account where there's actually a Chestnut smart contract, and you could put tokens into, and any kind of token, EOS tokens, Telos tokens, any kind of token, into that smart contract, set your security parameters and privacy parameters in your sort of instantiated instance within that ledger, which is the smart contract. And then interact with dApps as you normally would. One of the interesting things, one of the reasons for doing this is that to wrap a smart contract around an account right now is kind of expensive, given RAM costs especially. So you're actually paying to have these accounts. With a custodian solution, we could essentially make those free, right? Or much, much, much less expensive, and it's a much more scalable thing. So, I think our expectation is that there's going to be these, and people already are talking about custody solutions out there. So this is sort of like a autonomous custody solution where you can set security parameters for yourself. We think that there's a big future in that, and there probably likely are going to be a lot of different players providing this kind of service. I think we're very supportive of competition. It's good to have competition. It creates options for consumers, and it's something that we need in general in order for blockchain to be successful. You see competition in the internet, you should have it in blockchain too. And ultimately it's going to be up to consumers which interfaces they like, which services they like. So that's probably the future here.
Yeah, and competition definitely pushes things forward at a kind of frantic pace, and everyone can learn from each other's angles as well. So yeah, that is a great thing. Can you tell like a use case of down the road? There's a lot of these different types of custodial accounts. Tell how a user might use those. Why, basically.
Like why would they?
Yeah, like what would be like? Tell the story of a use case in layman's terms. Like if someone was going to use this, how it would work for them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so in the future with a custodian account, and again, all these custodian accounts may be structured slightly differently, but in general, the user experience would be the same, probably. So a user would go to something like Chestnut. They maybe already have an account, or they create an account at that point, and then they would transfer tokens that are in their account, any kind of tokens, into like basically the Chestnut bank, right? So just like with a traditional bank, you would essentially be having like a secured checking account by sending tokens into a Chestnut account, into a Chestnut instantiation, and then it would be tied to your normal account. So when you go to a DApp, which is probably going to be how a lot of people are interacting with different things. You go to a DApp when that and you try to transact, you try to interact with the DApp. The DApp is actually going to be interacting with the Chestnut smart contract rather than with your raw native account. And we're going to be, we or others will be holding these tokens on your behalf. We'll check against your security parameters, your privacy settings, and will either send the tokens that the DApp has requested or not, based on whether it conforms to your privacy settings. Now, one of the interesting things here is that because you have sort of a bank structure, right, where people are depositing tokens to be secured for them, people will handle it different organizations will handle this different ways, but you in theory could, for example, stake those tokens on their behalf and give them a return on those tokens that if they don't know how to do staking, they otherwise wouldn't be doing. So you could give them the account for free. This is just an example of one of the things you could do. You give them an account for free and actually give them a return on those tokens.
Okay. So would you say like it's adding a security layer in the same way that a bank does? I mean, there's a difference between just walking around with cash that you're taking care of yourself and then taking a bulk of that and putting it in a bank. So is that kind of the theory, is that we're going to put it somewhere where it's safer than me just holding it in my account, and I'm going to interact with maybe a smaller amount like I would a checking account?
It's essentially what you just described. Yeah. Okay. And it's kind of like a secured checking account. And like right now you have a bank overseeing all those transactions, deciding whether they think it's fraud or whether there's an issue. They're also dictating the terms of what you're allowed to do. Here you are allowed to set those parameters for yourself. So you're getting all that power back for yourself.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because all this saying bank so many times probably has a lot of red flags going off for people. They're Absolutely. Like, I'm turning it off. I don't like this project. but the cool thing is that it's like there is positive things about a bank. Obviously, that's the positives of bank, but you're kind of it's like a bank that you're pulling all the strings to, as opposed to basically giving all your decisions and power and everything to a bank,
Yeah. And again, this is just one way that we might go and one way that the industry might go. And it'll be up to consumers to decide whether they want this kind of structure or some other structure. And in our first product, you essentially are your own bank, right? And you have complete autonomy if you want it. It's a little bit more expensive to set up, but creating accounts, costs EOS for RAM. So, I think our goal and what the ecosystem should try to do is offer people a choice. And a wide spectrum of choices. And even within the banking model, there should be a lot of different structures and a lot of different options for people. And then they can decide what they want, right? And hopefully a lot of these things come with more education and with good interfaces that explain what's going on to people. And I think that's a challenge for the whole industry, is to make it easier to understand what's going on and then give people choice. And I think that's our goal, and that should be the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we went pretty far down the theoretical future there. So to bring it back, Chestnut is who knows how far down that road you're going to go. Everyone ends up pivoting at some point, and it sounds like but you guys have a killer base product that you're working on right now. So
Absolutely, yeah,
that'll be exciting to see you see where it goes. Absolutely.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, for sure. So previously you talked about ETH. You were working on what almost sounded like you said you called it a GoFundMe, but it kind of made me think of the worker proposal system that EOS is talking about. What are the similarities or big differences there?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you could use it for worker proposal funding. Or it essentially could be that, but it could be much bigger and broader than just working on blockchain projects. I think, again, our goal with that project was to bring blockchain to non-tech savvy or non-crypto people. We wrote a white paper. Part of what we put in there was reaching people who otherwise don't have bank accounts, for example. So, people who either aren't allowed to have bank accounts or there's no infrastructure for them. How do they raise funds right now? They can't really even use a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter. So addressing that contingent was part of our core thesis, part of our core mission. I think in order for us to be successful as an ecosystem and as an industry, we're going to have to figure out solutions and create products that are really useful to people outside of crypto, right? And outside of the people that are working on worker proposals and already are in the blockchain space. I think it's great. We need to retain all of those people. But as an example, a project like an Everpedia, they are bringing non-crypto people or reading Everpedia pages, right? I think we need more of that sort of thing, more of the bridge that makes it really easy for people to come in. And that was what we were trying to do with Kismet Chain and also what we're trying to do with Chestnut.
Yeah. That's there's a lot of these little angles. We're chipping away at that for sure. And one, I just talked to I think Rudy from Mythical Games a couple days ago, and that's a really cool opportunity to because they're launching like a legit video game connected to the EOS blockchain, and it's going to be that's so much reach as far as into the gamers and things like that. A lot of people will be using EOS who have never used it before at some point in 2019 whenever that launches. So that'll be cool.
Yeah,
sure.
I think people hate on games a little bit in blockchain. There's a lot of gambling. There's I guess there is a difference between gambling and games, but a lot of the sort of use cases right now are gambling or games or those sorts of things. But I think in a lot of ways that is an amazing bridge, right? If you can create a game that uses blockchain, people get that and they're going to play it, and anybody can play those things. So I think we've seen some examples of successful games. I think we haven't seen the blockbuster game yet. And I think, Mythical's, maybe in a position to be the first one to do that. And that could really anything. The exciting thing is there's so many potential catalysts out there that could just blow the top off this thing. And all we need is really one, right? Yeah. One or two examples and that could be in ETH or EOS or, Tron or anybody. All we need is a couple real use cases of blockchain being used in a massive way, and it's gonna just blow the top off. So
yeah, absolutely. I know that Tron's focused a lot on video games as well. Right. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what that kind of straw that breaks a camel's back is going to be? But yeah, there'll be something eventually.
Yeah, and I think it's good that people are working on lots of different things. So we shouldn't just be working on games. And there is a lure to just work on gambling apps because people are making money doing that. But I think again, we should not all be working on gambling apps, and so I think that would be a dystopian outcome here if blockchain just.
Yeah, it'll go back to the original thought of what Bitcoin was for sure. Just dark web interactions.
But that was actually a pretty big use case, and it was used in a pretty massive way for that, even though it was. Maybe not what everybody wanted to be used for. And I think that that's probably what's going to happen in blockchain in general, not necessarily using it for illegal activities, but, using it for games. Some people may not want it to just be for games, but if that's what consumers want right now. And if those are the best use cases right now, then great. Let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a trip to Bali. What is your team has been traveling, working remotely, or what was that all about?
Yeah. So we've been traveling. Danielle and I, who's a member of the team as well, are actually married. And we've been traveling for about a year and a half. We found ourselves in Bali for 4 or 5 months. And one of the reasons we stayed is there was an amazing, very active, small but very active cryptocurrency community. And so, we met everybody that's part of that community. The three of them that are part of the Chestnut team actually started something called Blockchain Babes. And they hosted weekly meetings and were very active. So Annette and Patricia, who are also part of the team, actually have been living in Bali. Danielle and I were only there for 5 months, and everybody by just sort of coincidence happened to be coming to London around the hackathon. And we were like, hey, Danielle and I had done the Hong Kong one. We're like, let's all just get together and sort of have fun. We don't even have to take it that seriously. We can just sort of hack on something and meet everybody, and it'll be a good time. And, we got a little bit caught up in the actual activity when we got there, and we're like, okay, we actually have a really good idea that fits pretty well here. And, I think we're all very competitive as well. And, and frankly wanted this to be a real thing, and recognize, and we're getting feedback from a lot of people at the hackathon that this should be a thing that's built. Somebody should build this. And so, we went for it. But, I think, we started in Bali and then one in London. And that was like a little saying that we had at the London thing. Came in second in London, I guess, to be fair.
Good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you been to Bali?
I haven't been to Bali, but that's been on my, that's kind of on my list of travels, because I know they have a good kind of digital nomad scene in Bali and like Chiang Mai and Singapore.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a huge digital nomad movement. Again, there is a very intense cryptocurrency movement. They actually had a Bitcoin economy, one of the first places to have a Bitcoin economy. I forget the year, but maybe 2015, something like that. And a lot of the stores and restaurants were accepting Bitcoin. And there were a number of people that were attempting to exclusively use Bitcoin as their only mechanism of spend. And there were quite a few of them that were successful doing that for a while.
How cool.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that picking back up, I guess, if with EOS with not having transaction fees. That was probably a big hurdle for people, the times and the fees.
That's exactly right.
So
and the price going up also, I think, was a factor. So people started wanting to hoard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. A little bit of price stability. People might start spending stuff, but when it's going up kind of hard for a little while, people are not wanting to be spending it.
That's right. Yeah. And I think the transaction time, so the fees, but also, the fact that it just took a while for the money to go, that again, just like the interfaces we were talking about and sort of the user experience, stores are used to a transaction just happening. They're not used to having to wait minutes or tens of minutes or an hour for a transaction to go through. And so I think that experience for them was suboptimal.
Yeah. Your credit card swipe is probably kind of the standard, which is 10 seconds possibly as it processes.
Right.
So, which is a good sign, because EOS right now can kind of keep up with that. So yeah.
It's very exciting.
So, what's the blockchain scene there like? How many people, and is it all developers, or is it like what type of community is it?
It's very mixed. There are people working on all sorts of interesting projects. So I would say there's blockchain project founders there. There are devs. There are designers. There are blockchain experts. There's something called Blockchain Zoo there. That's I want to say a blockchain consultancy, and they have a weekly meetup where somebody presents, and then the community sort of asks questions and meets up, gets dinner afterwards. So that sort of was like the epicenter in Ubud, which is the jungle area up north. I think each of the cities have their own thing, but we spend most of our time in Ubud. One of the interesting things is that there's a lot of people that vacation to Bali. And so there was a constant stream of people that would be on vacation and would Google, hey, is there anything blockchain related in Bali? And they'd find this group that met every Tuesday. And so they'd show up. So we constantly had had sort of visitors visiting. And they were a massive range of personalities, of devs and founders of things, and even some VCs. So it was pretty interesting, and really a great way to get into blockchain, given the small community and the helpfulness that everybody had. I think, when you're in a place like LA or San Francisco or Santa Cruz, there's a lot of people, but it's sort of hard to find community, I think, in some ways. You can go to a meetup and there's a few hundred people. It's different than going to a meetup where there's 20 people or 30 people.
Yeah, actually I saw a coding boot camp out in Bali. That was, So anyway, that was part when I was doing, I've done a lot of research of digital nomading. So I've been getting ready to go on a little adventure at some point. So
you'd love Bali. You definitely go to Ubud. They have a massive digital nomad scene. It's basically, there's like the yogis and spiritual people there, and then the digital nomads. And some people cross both lines, which, we sort of transcended both. We're into both scenes, but they have huge co-working spaces, a lot of presentations going on. It's very cool.
Killer. Yeah. You know where I'm gonna shoot down to Costa Rica, EOS Costa Rica. They have a thing called EOS Surf, but it's basically like a workspace by the beach for like EOS people. So
I've heard of this, yeah.
Yeah, so
I would love to check that out. That sounds super cool.
I'm gonna go check that out in February. I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
February, are you going to go to Envision? There's a big music festival in Costa Rica at the same time.
Oh, really? No, I'll write that down. It's always good to. All right, cool. So usually in the beginning of the show, I ask what you're most excited about for EOS in general, or what's most interesting to you. We'll do it kind of as we start to wind down here. Okay. So yeah, what's your favorite thing about EOS right now?
My favorite thing, I think it's the opportunity to actually build modern apps that feel like modern apps, right? And I think that's really hard to do on any other blockchain right now, and I have experience with that. And I think, we're starting to see, or we're starting to hear about dApps that are being built that are, I think EOS has the biggest opportunity to actually come up with and launch some of these dApps that people are going to use. And they're maybe not even going to know that they're using a blockchain, right? I think that's sort of where we're going. And we're going there probably pretty quickly, where you're going to have abstraction, maybe even a wallet abstraction, where you're just using a dApp and you find out later that, there was this whole blockchain thing, which was also part of it, but it feels fast. Your privacy is maintained, or you actually, are storing things in a public ledger. So you get all of those benefits of blockchain, but it's just like you're, messing around with Airbnb or Uber or whatever. I think that EOS is really the only ones, from what I've seen, that are in a position to do that. And I think, as we were saying before, one or two apps like that are gonna blow the entire lid off the entire blockchain ecosystem, not just EOS. So I think it's sort of on us, but it's an opportunity, but also sort of a responsibility for the EOS community to lead this charge and be the tip of the spear for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's such a fun time. It feels like I have a secret that I try to tell people, but they're not ready for it. It's just gonna have to start to happen. But I got my cousin an EOS account and put some EOS in it for Christmas. So that's my way to just make it happen for him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And reserved a name for him. That's one of the cool things about EOS.
Actually, his name's perfect. It's John Stallings, and he only spells it JON. So it's 12 letters. I was like, oh my gosh, this was meant to be.
Yep. So a lot of people, I just, when I code, I just like hone in and I just crush code, and people jokingly say I'm like a machine. So my EOS name is I'm the Machine.
Nice.
I was pretty fired up when I realized that was 12 letters and 12 characters. So
yeah, it's fun. I got Mr. Happy Money for my
12 letter. Yeah. That's great. That's amazing. Yeah. Great.
Cool. Well, we covered a lot about Chestnut. I mean, kind of the hackathon aspect, where you're at now, possible deep into the future, some thought experiments. Was there anything that we glossed over that you'd like to talk about or get a little deeper into with Chestnut? Anything we missed?
One thing I would say is that we are starting to take early access signups. So if you go to, and I don't know if we're at the point where we mention links, but
Yeah,
chestnutaccounts.com, chestnutaccounts.com, you can sign up to be part of the early access. And early access probably will be first on some sort of testnet. So you can mess around with it, get a sense for what's going on. We also have a pretty active community on Telegram, which is Chestnut EOS. So feel free to come there, engage with us. I think also if there are if there's anybody really across any skill set that's interested in joining us on this mission, we'd love to chat with you and have you involved in whatever way makes sense. We're also we're exploring doing open source and worker proposals, those sorts of things, and want to collaborate with the community. Our team's sort of unique offering in general is this focus on user experience. Our team has a lot of experience with user experience and interfaces and making things really easy and flow very well, which we think is really important to having blockchain be successful. So we're open to talking to folks about that. We really want it's not even necessarily competition at this point. It's really, we're all in this together and we need to rise the ocean so all the ships can rise. So, would love to help people or talk to people about improving their interfaces, their user experiences, and that sort of stuff.
Killer. Well, for people listening, I will share the links in the show notes so that you can find Chestnut and you can find the early access. If you're watching this on YouTube, listen to the podcast also. Some shows are only in podcast version, so it's not only about YouTube, my EOS friends. We've got EOS San Francisco Block Producer, which I'm a co-founder at, and we have we're building right now a pretty rad DApp incubator in the heart of San Francisco with a full-on workspace and everything. So we've got some cool teams. We're putting together our first set of teams that are going to come through our incubator. We're trying to be basically like a Y Combinator for EOS. So I'm pumped on that. I want to pick your brain about after the show, about the process of what they did for the incubator at the EOS Hackathon. So that'd be rad.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. I also will tell you, early in my career, I was actually in venture capital, private equity, that space. So, I have some insights, and I love to help people navigate those waters as well. So,
killer. Okay, well, we need we love advice, we love collaboration, so we'll hook up for sure. Thank you. Yeah. And hey, thanks for coming on the show. You guys have a really interesting, cool project. I can't wait to see what happens. A quarter from now or whenever something new happens, let me know and we'll bring you back on the show. My EOS podcast friends, much love to you. And until next time, cheers.
See you, everyone. Thanks, Brandon.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is.